How's it going, everyone? Cup of Anime Joe here. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about the current situation on Egghead now, and maybe about some of the matchups we might get. So, in the last chapter, we just had the remaining four Gorosei land right next to Saturn, and now we have this impressive lineup here with all five of them. I think the coolest looking ones is Marcus Mars, which is like the big bird dude, the Itsumade, and Ethan Baron Venus Juro, who's like a skeleton horse centaur looking thing. Um, even in the review, I chuckled a little bit at the Warcuries form, the pig, the Feng Shi, I guess is what the officials calling it. It's just looks silly to me a little bit. It's less imposing, I'd say, than the other ones. But they're all huge. They just completely dwarf Luffy. And I think in this panel, Luffy is no longer in his giant form, right? Because when he was in his giant form, he was like palming Saturn's face. And now he's a lot smaller than even Saturn, who really seems to be like smaller than some of these other Gorosei members too. But I am thoroughly convinced that even though Luffy was doing really good against just Saturn and Kizaru, that he can't fight all five of the Gorosei. And you know, they're already splitting up, right? We have Ethan, Mr. Nesjuro, just blitzing the Pacifista and very systematically taking them out one by one by one. And then we have Marcus Mars flying up to the Labostratum. It looked like he flew into the barrier in the last chapter. I really think he just made it right on through. Luffy's passed through it. Bonnie even made it through it. But it's possible that it's going to take him a couple of attempts to make it through into the Labostratum. But, you know, one thing I was thinking about is Sanji tells the rest of the Straw Hats to just escape. So, I mean, there is a scenario where the majority of the crew just immediately gets off the island, right? We have Frankie, a couple of the Vegapunks, I think Lilith, Atlas possibly, and Bonnie with the Giants near their ship. And then we have the rest of the crew, besides a few people we'll talk about here in a minute, at the Sunny. And, you know, if the barrier gets disabled at some point, they can just get rid of Usopp's bamboo pop greens and the Sunny's going to slide right off out into the ocean. You know, and with the Giants, even with the Pacifista getting taken out, they still destroyed a lot of the ships. We still have the Giants here continuing to destroy the ships from the Buster Call. So, you know, I do think there's a good chance that a path can be cleared for the Sunny. But the curious thing is the members of the Straw Hats that are remaining behind is, of course, Luffy, and essentially what at this point we could view as his three Yonko commanders, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei. And so I'm starting to think that these four are going to play a major role in helping the other Straw Hats escape, holding off the Gorosei. I don't actually think we're going to defeat them here, save maybe Saturn. If any Gorosei member is officially going to get defeated in this arc, I think it's Saturn, because he was the one who first arrived. And there's also the Giants here too, right? So, you know, it's interesting. I would have originally jumped to Zoro fighting Nesjuro, Venus, because they're both swordsmen. I do think there will be a point in the story where these two clash. I think a case also could be made for Brook, because they're kind of similar, right? They're both skeletons, they're both swordsmen, and they both use ice. Maybe Venus Nesjuro is taking the chill of the underworld, just like Brook does. But the Straw Hat I actually think he's on track to run into soonest is Sanji, because Sanji's on the lower level still with Vegapunk. The one who I think might be on track to run into Zoro and Jinbei sooner is Marcus Mars. Now, originally, I would have thought that Mars would have been a good matchup for Sanji, because Mars can fly, Sanji has Skywalk. But it might be interesting to flip it, because Zoro is notoriously weak. I shouldn't call him weak. That's bad. He's not as effective against against opponents who are far away. And he actually struggled with King. We saw this. He already struggled with a flying opponent. So maybe we have a chance to get Zoro some experience fighting another flying opponent in Marcus Mars. And maybe it'll be like a tag team effort between Jinbei and Zoro. Maybe Sanji does end up skywalking up there and he takes that fight. We have a couple of options there. We also do have the Giants, right? So right now, Luffy is facing Warcury, who didn't do much in the last arc or anything. Saturn is still there, was attacking Luffy. And then we have Shepherd Jew Peter, the Sandworm. And we also have Dory and Broggy. So right now we have 3 people. Luffy, Dory, and Broggy. And then we have 3 Gorosei members. Now, I think Dory and Broggy had a couple other giants with them. We still have Oimo and Kashi somewhere out there. So I think even if the other Straw Hats were to escape, we have a decent lineup of combatants here to still kind of hold off and fight against the Gorosei. And, maybe this is a chance where Luffy and his commanders get to have a really good showing. I mean, these characters always look good, especially Zoro and Sanji. Jinbei is pretty new to the crew. I think Who's Who was kind of a wimp in comparison to Jinbei. The fight was pretty good, but as soon as Jinbei took it seriously, he just smacked Who's Who. I had originally thought a fun matchup maybe could have been Lucci versus Jinbei, because it would have been like a competent version of Who's Who fighting him. But Lucci was just taken out by Zoro. He might not be done for the rest of the arc, but I really think he's going to get sidelined as a combatant here. I almost feel like he was just used by Oda as a tool to keep Zoro where he's at, up in the lab, and instead of him running off somewhere and getting lost. Right. I also have no idea what Kizaru is going to do. He might just be done as well. It might even be cool if Kizaru comes to Sanji, but instead of fighting him, he takes over Vegapunk or something. I really think the Stella body is already dead. We've seen that the satellites are still alive and kicking. So this gives me even more of a reason to think that the Stella is dead, because there are other Vegapunks who can carry on his will. So we haven't totally lost Vegapunk. And at the same time, his sacrifice and actions can be meaningful, especially alongside him releasing his message. And I mean, what did we learn from Dr. Hirulook back in Drum Island? A man only dies when he is forgotten. And I think Vegapunk's already kind of an unforgettable figure in the world of One Piece. But he's really about to solidify himself with this message, almost like Whitebeard saying the One Piece is real, or something like that. So I really think it's shaping up that maybe we get Sanji and Jinbei versus Marcus Mars, and possibly another member makes it up there, right? But I think right now it's going to be Marcus Mars. We might get Sanji versus Venus Nosturo, right? Because Sanji's still down on the shore, and Nosturo is currently speed blitzing the shore, taking out the Pacifista. And we know that, eventually him and Zoro are probably going to fight. I shouldn't say we know. I think they're going to fight because they're swordsmen. But he's also very fast, and Sanji's known for being very fast as well. He Katakuri saw that he'd have been able to dodge him in Whole Cake. He totally blitzed Oven as well. So we've seen definite speed feats from Sanji that I think might make an interesting fight between him and Venus Nostromo. Kizaru, I mean, I really think he's probably done in this arc. I think, and not because he's taken out of the battle, right? He is still an admiral. He's definitely powerful. No, I think he's mentally checked out after having killed Vegapunk. And I do, like I said earlier, I kind of like the idea of maybe him being the one who takes Vegapunk's body, freeing Sanji up to join the rest of the crew who's fighting and, take on an opponent. Because I just don't see, unless the Giants fight him, we maybe do need some hype for the Giants. And again, there's a lot of members here we just don't know. We have Oimo and Kashi not currently on screen. So we do still have people, assuming the Straw Hats leave. If they decide to stay behind with the rest of the crew, then we have more matchups there. But with Sanji really stressing to the rest of them that they just need to go, I do see there being a possibility that Oda separates the crew here. At least for a little bit. They'd probably reunite on Elbaf. That's the next arc. But I can see the ones Sanji told to escape, just escape. And then it being Luffy and his Yonko commanders, the new monster trio, whatever you want to call them, staying behind with the Giants to combat whatever Marines are left. I don't know how much of the Buster Call is going to continue. I want to imagine that maybe the Giants still mop that up even without the Pacifista. We do still have the Vice Admirals. Maybe they can be some cool matchups for either the other members of the Straw Hat crew or some of the other Giants as well. And I just think this climax is shaping up to be huge, right? Like, I don't know. In my time, I've been reading One Piece for quite a while now. I don't remember exactly when I started, but it's been 10, maybe 15 years since I started reading. And I can't recall if there's ever been a climax this potentially big, with all 5 Gorosei in front of us, in front of our boys, revealed, and with Vegapunk hopefully about to drop a massive lore dump. He can't give away too much. I think that's kind of Robin's role, to learn a lot of the majority of the history and actually get the truth from the poneglyphs. But I do think at least Vegapunk is going to finish the will of Professor Clover, who wasn't able to say the name of the ancient kingdom. And I think that he might even reveal some other stuff along with it. As for what that could be, I'm not certain at this time. But I do see a good chance of him at least getting the name of the ancient kingdom out, and maybe a little bit about the like maybe he knows about Eam, right? Maybe he can bring up that there is a ruler above the Gorosei. Maybe he can talk about the fact that the Tenryubito, or that really the Celestial Dragons, are hiding a lot of history. Maybe he'll talk about how regressed the One Piece world has become compared to what it seemingly was like in the Ancient Kingdom time. I think there's a lot that Vegapunk can reveal that would be a big shocker to the world, but wouldn't take a whole lot away from what Robin's going to end up doing on Laugh Tale. One other thing I want to mention, I talked about this in my review too, I think there's a really good chance the broadcast is not even coming from Egghead, or that the broadcast is coming from more than one location. So maybe there is part of it coming from the Labo phase, but one of my favorite things I've been hearing going around is that it's possible that the broadcast is also coming from Kamabaka Kingdom, because Kamabaka Queendom, I'm sorry. It's because in the beginning of the arc, Shaka called Dragon and said, I think I'm going to die soon. Dragon having ample opportunities to move and come to Egghead, hasn't done anything. Now, this is typical dragon behavior. I really think Oda's saving him for a certain time in the story and for a really big action, and I just don't think we've gotten to the stage yet where Dragon is going to mobilize himself and the Revolutionary Army and really go after the Celestial Dragons in full. But a cool in-world explanation would be if Dragon also wanted to remain behind to make sure that Vegapunk's broadcast cannot get interrupted. Because the timeline aside, right, we have 7 minutes left. Vegapunk seems very convinced that no matter what the world government tries, they're not going to be able to stop the broadcast. And I mean, this is the smartest man in the One Piece world that we're talking about here. So I think there's a decent possibility. I don't know if he could have predicted all the Gorosei showing up. I know I wasn't thinking about that. I don't know if anyone else was talking about that. I don't think we were expecting all of the Gorosei to appear. But I do think he would have foreseen a strong possibility of Egghead Island itself not making it out of this after all of the stuff that he did to incur the wrath of the world government. And so it would make sense to me if he was able to set up the broadcast maybe to be coming from somewhere else or from a couple of places at once. Something to give it more contingency, especially since they ended up planning on waiting some time before revealing it. So, yeah, I'm just really excited to see where things go next, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it ahead of the next chapter. I don't think there's a break next week, so we're going to be getting 1-1-1-1. Maybe it'll be a big Zoro chapter. Maybe this will be when he is confronted with Mars, like Mars gets through the barrier, and then we got Zoro in his chapter 1-1-1-1, like his bounty, and Jinbei tag team right there. Straw Hat Yonko Commanders versus a Gorosei. But we'll see where it goes. I'd like you all to have a good day. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you later.